Okay, well, practice is normal this week. We're actually practicing tomorrow, not tonight. I thought last week was a good change-up due to the voting thing, and players really embraced it. But we're going back to our regular format. We'll practice tomorrow, then Wednesday, Thursday, and leave out Friday. So that's kind of where we're at. Hopefully we get some guys back. We had some guys nicked up last week. There might be a few other guys on the mend, so we'll see where that's at with Jerry tomorrow. Playing Washington, very good, very good defense. They're very strong offensively. They have some potential at the wide receiver positions, the tight end position, quarterback, big strong arm guy. They like running the football as well. So played Oregon really good. I thought they did a nice job. Came down to a couple possessions, but they're coached well. They play physical. They have a nice fan base up there that's very loud. I can remember, I think our first year we went up there, it was very loud. It's a nice stadium to play in. The crowd is on top of you, so we anticipate it to be a very physical game, both sides of the ball. Questions?
How you doing, Herm? Hood Rubino, Devil's Digest. I know if any blemish came out of the USC game was actually the passing game, and I know you addressed it even earlier in an interview. What do you think, I mean, this late in the season, can be corrected to get this aerial attack back on track?
Well, it's just really the connection with the receiver and the quarterback, with the receivers. You know, there's been a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. I mean, that's a little bit of the problem as well. Been a few that have been dropped that you can clean up, right? Been some probably Jaden wish he could take back, as far as maybe, you know, putting it in a little window, a little tighter. So it's work in progress. There's no doubt about that. But we've seen what it can look like. I think UCLA was a good game when it all came together, our running game and our passing game. So we still have an opportunity the next 3 weeks to clean that up before we go to a bowl, which is kind of important as well. So I think they know that on offense, and that'll be kind of interesting how it progresses the next couple of weeks.
Michelle Gardner, Arizona Republic. Coach, you're playing another team this week with an interim coach and a new coordinator. So 3 weeks in a row you're playing teams where things may be not the same as what you had expected on tape. So how hard is it to make those adjustments with different coaches in charge?
Well, I think, you know, the coaches basically, you decide what kind of plan you want to present to the players, but you still have the same players. So regardless if you've called it or you haven't called it, you're always going to miss those guys because they're familiar with the routine of how the guy might call the game or whatever. But I think whoever sits in that seat of having to do that, you got to realize the players don't change. And you want to put them in the best position that they can be in to be successful. So I think that's how I've always looked at it. I think that's how you have to look at it. You know, and one coach might do a couple things a little bit different, but the system's in. You're not going to change the system in a week. It's too hard to do that. You know, so whoever is going to take over, obviously will go about his business. But I think the thing is, it's all about the players. Making sure the players can perform well.
Chris Cartman, Son of a Source. Jaden had a couple interceptions and accuracy maybe not as sharp in that game. Mechanically, are there some things there to be cleaned up, or is it more about just getting in a good rhythm, or what do you think?
I think rhythm, but I also think using his legs and setting his feet better. Now, some of it has to do with the rush and being rushed in the pocket and can't step up, right? I mean, that has something to do with it, too. They're all the factors, and I think that's any quarterback would tell you that. The accuracy is having your legs and your arm attached together as one. Sometimes when that's not the case, you got to fall back and try to make a throw in a little window, or you can be a little off, right? If you're getting a rush and you can't step up because the rush is about to hit you, that has something to do with it, too. But I just think you got to be quiet. Your feet have to be quiet, you know, where you can step into throws. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And if, you know, Jaden's played and Zach has played quarterback, so those are fixable things. That's just technique and fundamentals and just trusting it and not being in a hurry so much, but just getting your feet in rhythm with your arm and coming over the top some, and not so much dropping your elbow. You drop your elbow, you're not as act. And I'm not a quarterback coach. I'm not trying to but I've seen enough good ones and I've been around them to watch them. I know a little bit about to be dangerous in that sense, but I'm not trying to coach quarterback. But obviously I'll have some suggestions, so that's kind of how it works.
Coach Zach Keenan, Devil's Digest. Excuse me. This past weekend, as I'm sure you were aware, with the Salute to Service game, how important to you is it upholding ASU's legacy of honoring service members?
Well, I think that's part of the legacy of this place. Obviously, Pat Tillman brought a big image when it comes to that. I think it's wonderful. I watched it NFL as well. The NFL did the same thing. So I understand it. I think it's important. As you guys know, my father served in 2 wars. And anytime that occasion comes up in football, and happens to come up and during football, it's always one that kind of reminds me of what I was taught from my dad and how important that our freedoms are. They're not free. And anytime you can serve those folks and say hello, I don't know, anytime I see them carrying the flags or whatever, I make beeline. I try to shake their hand and tell them thank you for coming. When I see service people at games, that's the first thing I do. I stop and make sure I shake their hand and tell them thank you for what you do. So yeah, I think it's important.
Hi, Herm. Doug Howard, The Athletic. In 2019, Jane was so good as a freshman, going into Michigan State, winning a lot of comeback wins, poise. As a result of that, expectations for him really soared high, and it seems like he's been kind of chasing those expectations ever since. How difficult is that to manage?
That's part of it, though, and he's a quarterback. He realizes it, but I think the good thing is that he's in a place where we realize what he's dealing with, and when expectations are put on you, that's part of it. Expectations are always, every year it seems like expectations grow, no matter who puts them on you. Sometimes other people put expectations on people, and it's like, okay, I got to deal with that. That's the part of being a quarterback. That's the part of being a team. And he can't do it by himself, though. And I think that's the conversations that I have to have with him, that you just can't do it alone. And he understands he's a quarterback. But he'll get through it, and he'll be fine. We've got some work to do. And I think the thing is just getting familiar with the receivers. There have been so many guys in and out of that lineup for him, and he's just been missing guys. And then some guys can't practice all week, and then they play in the game, and it's just a lot. And I'm not making excuses. That's just a fact. And I think we got to get it cleaned up. I know that, because it can help us. When we're clicking and our pass game is going, it's fun to watch now, because explosive plays are part of football. It's hard to just methodically move down the field. Now, we got an explosive runner that has made some explosive plays for us. That has helped us. But that's not always the case. And you need to, it's easier to fly to California than to drive, right? So throwing the ball is important. You got to get it in the air, man. You got to hit some of those things. It's I've done both, and it's actually easier to fly. Now, to drive, and especially when you got a puppy, and then you make more stops, but on a plane it's easier. So just gotta, every once in a while you gotta hit one.
I also want to ask you just about his leadership ability. He's not the rah-rah guy that we see so much, but there are different forms of leadership. In your experience as a head coach and the quarterbacks you've been around, do they come in all different forms, or is there a time where a guy needs to get up and make his voice heard?
There's certain moments when I think you have to speak up as a quarterback, but they all handle it different. Vinny Testaverde was different than Chad Pennington. Joe Montana was a little bit different than Steve Young, right, when Joe came to Kansas City. So I've been around a few guys that I've watched. Trent Green was a little bit different than Damon Ewert, one of the Ewert guys, right? His son's up in Washington. It's kind of interesting. I'm that old, right? And you just watch the kids now. One of the Ewert kids is up there. I'm like, really? You got to be kidding me, right? So, they're all different, but they all have to have they got to have some leadership skills, and they're all different about how they go about doing it. Yeah.
Coach, you're always so cool on the field and stuff. What is the hardest thing about being a head coach with the ups and downs of everything?
Well, I think during the game, it's just during the course of the week in life, during the course of the week.
Yeah.
To feel the temperature of your team, right, and the coaching staff, because you have to touch everybody. And I find my way of trying to do that. It's harder here because there's so many players. In the NFL, there's not as many. Now there's more coaches in the NFL, right? But you got to find a way to understand the temperature, how to read it correctly, because you see it every day. You feel it in the locker room. You feel it in the meeting rooms. You feel it at practice. And I've got a sense of the temperature. And last week was a week of really trying to make sure we got it to where we needed, where it was going to be. Okay, this is the temperature we need to have going on this field this week, and it was felt. I think the coaches helped it, and I think going forward we got to keep it that way. And it's just some little things you got to say and do, whether you change practice, how you go about meetings, how you present things to a team. There was a lot of presenting different ways to this team this week. There's a way you say, okay, I got to do this now, and I got to do this now. So you get a feel for it, and I think when you understand your players, it helps. And that's why I always say, your house is your house, and you got to understand what it looks like, what it feels like, and no one else knows that because they're not here every day, and they're not in the meeting room with the coaches and with the players. It's when you know what it is, and because you have a sense of it, you got to go about working your way through all that. It's a good question. It's really a really good question.
And Coach, from this last game defensively, I mean, when going back looking at it, do you feel that, I don't like to use the word best, but maybe the most complete game that the defense has played this season?
Oh, they've played some decent games. I think the thing that I liked the most about it was that it was a tight football game for both sides of the ball. And we reacted pretty good defensively when some things that were presented to us due to turnover. We put the flames out. Just put it out. I used to always say, put the fire out. Don't let that momentum all of a sudden that team has right now, don't let it start fueling them. Just put it out as fast as you can, and I think they rose to the occasion for that. Tackled pretty well, didn't allow a bunch of big explosive plays, which was good. Took the ball away a couple times, but stopped the run, and that was going into the game. That was what it was about, just stop them from running the ball, and it was fun to watch them. It was fun to watch the whole team react. I mean, that was a 17-16 game for a long time. And any kind of play either way, you knew was going to shift it. But scoring 14 points in the fourth quarter and shutting them out, that kind of told the story of the game.
I didn't see Jack Jones didn't play on
Yes.
Saturday. Is there an update on his status?
Yeah, he's going to play this week. He'll be ready to roll.
Coach Jack Loader, House of Sparky. Obviously, you know Rashad and how he's capable of having a game like he did on Saturday, and it's going to get people talking on the national landscape. Do you feel like he's gotten the respect he deserves all year? Before this one?
I don't know that. I think people that watch him, the people at the next level, if you're trying to defend him in college football, you realize what type of runner he is. And I think that's probably the most important thing. But obviously, on a stage like that, against USC, that people notice that. They go, oh, wow, guy's pretty good. Yeah, he's pretty good. And when we run the ball for 200 plus yards, we're 12-1 since we've been here. So that's a stat that's pretty good.
Pass that all the way down to Michelle.
Coach, you talked last week about wanting to see the joy in your players' faces and winning a game. What was that like in the locker room after that game, especially against a team like USC that a lot of those kids grew up watching?
They had a lot of fun, and it was just fun to watch the coaches and the players, just the joy of winning a game again, you know. And when you play USC, I mean, obviously we talked about it earlier in the week. It's a logo school, you know. Everyone knows the logo, and we've been fortunate. We played them 4 times here, and we split twice. You know, we're 2-2. So I'm not saying that's good enough. You'd like to be 4-0 against them. But I think these guys realize that we've played them 4 times, and this is probably the biggest margin of victory for either one of us, right? And that alone was kind of interesting because I told them during the week, I said, guys, if the history just keeps repeating itself like it does when we play these guys, it's going to the 4th quarter, and it's going to be close. It's going to be a 1-score game because that's what it's been. And lucky for us, we got to pull the way and got it to be a 2-score. But even when it got that, I went, oh, well, I've seen this story before, right? Can we not allow that stuff to happen? Because, you know, with 3:58 on the clock, it reminded me of 3:58 prior to what happened, right? And I'm like, uh-oh, same number. Isn't that something? And we ended up closing it out, which was good.
Herm, you were especially good on defense through the middle with DJ Davidson playing maybe his best game, and he's been really good all year. Also, Darian Butler, Kyle Soley played well. What did you think about just that presence from them?
No, you're right. And we put it on DJ. We put it on our D-line. He was one that we said, look, you got to win at the point. Because if we're going to stop him from running, you got to be the vocal point. Linebackers obviously have to play the run, but also play the pass, you know, because they throw so much. And I think those guys played well. I can't say enough about our offensive line, the way they played. You know, they played well too, and they had to wear the hat this week. I told them, offensive. If you got to play good for us to win. We have to run the ball. We don't want to. The scary part of playing those guys was their rush, and I said we don't want to get into a game where we got to drop back and throw the football, because then that presents a problem. You know, because they got good athletes. They got some guys up there that can rush the quarterback. I said, we want to make it a muddy game, even though it's not raining. We want to make it a muddy game, and our line needed to play well on both sides, and they did. They're going to need to do that the next 3-4 games. However we play, they got to play well. I mean, it's really, it boils down to that. I mean, when you play well as a offensive line, and when you can run the ball, I mean. If you watch the Cardinals game, I mean, they ran the ball. Eno scored a touchdown. It was hard for me to watch. You know, because Eno scored a touchdown and Brandon caught a ball. I was like, okay, you know, I know Lynch, and then I know the head coach for the Cardinals. You know, he played for. So I'm like sitting there just watching it, you know, and I'm watching our players. But at the end, the Cardinals ran the ball. Man. They did a nice job running the football, you know,
DJ Davidson as an NFL prospect. It seems like he's really helped his case this year. Has a chance whenever he goes to get drafted.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
No, I know he does, and we talked about earlier in the season that you know, he needed to step up his game, and he needed to dominate, and he's been very consistent. This is his best season since we've been here. There's no doubt, and he's a mature guy. I mean, he's a good player. I mean, he's a physical player, and he plays right in there. I mean, he plays in the, you know, there's not a lot of room where he plays. He plays in the box, and they double him a lot and do things to him. But you know, I think the more he can play like that, it helps him. But it helps us too, especially.
Sean Lynch from the State Press, Herm. To go back on Rashad White, personally, he kind of reminds me of a Larry Johnson type running back. I don't know. Where he can run, he runs routes well, he blocks well. But what is his impact to the team, personally?
He's a spark to our offense. You know, when you get him the ball, because you never know what's going to happen. And you're right, he can catch the ball very well. Larry Johnson's a good, and I had Larry. Reminds me more of Marcus, though. Reminds me more of Marcus Allen. has the same stature as Marcus had and has the same ability to cut. Marcus was a good vision guy, could cut and catch the ball really well. But you know, he is a guy, when he gets the ball in his hand, you don't know. A 3-yard run could all of a sudden be a 25-yard run. You know, if you don't tackle him. When he gets in the back end of the defense, I think he's a lot faster than the defenders anticipate. You know, because he's kind of a long strider, it looks like. But all of a sudden, he puts his foot in the ground and he makes a cut, and he sees daylight and he can run. I mean, that running, you know, that USC has some fast guys on that defense now. And when he got in the back end of that thing, nobody caught him. And generally, you know, those guys run and catch. I mean, he had to make a cut, you know, to slow him down a little bit, but still, I mean, he's a complete football player. There's no doubt about that.